Yes? Okay. What are you playing with, Bluey? Ooh. Alright, this one is called Snowdrop. It was the middle of the winter when heavy snowflakes of snow swirl and fall in a faraway country. A queen sat sewing at her window. As she looked out, the queen pricked her finger, and 3 drops of blood fell upon the snow. Then she gazed thoughtfully at the red drops sprinkled on the white snow and said, "Oh, would that be my little daughter, be as white as snow and as red as the blood and the black of this ebony window frame?" And so, as the little girl grew up, her skin was white as snow, and her cheeks were rosy as blood, and her hair was black as ebony, and she was called Snowdrop. But her mother died, and the king soon remarried. This queen was very beautiful, but so vain that she could not bear to think that anyone could be more beautiful than she was. And she had a magic mirror to which she used to go and gaze upon herself and say, "Tell me, mirror, tell me true, of all the ladies in the land, who is the fairest? Tell me, who?" And the mirror would always answer, "Thou, queen, art the fairest in the land." But Snowdrop grew more and more beautiful until one day when the queen went to gaze upon herself as usual, the magic mirror answered, "Thou, queen, art fair and beautiful to see, but Snowdrop is lovelier far than thee." When she heard this, the queen turned pale with rage and envy. She called to one of her servants and said, "Take Snowdrop away into the wild wood and make sure that I never see her again." And the servant led her away, but then Snowdrop begged him to spare her life. His heart melted. So he decided not to kill her, but to leave her in the wood. And though he thought the wild beasts would most probably tear her to pieces, the servant felt as if a great weight were taken off from his heart. Then poor Snowdrop wandered alone and frightened through the wood. But though the wild beasts roared nearby, they did not hurt her. As evening fell, she came to a cottage among the hills and went in to rest, for her feet would carry her no further. Everything was tidy and neat in the cottage. On the table was spread a white cloth and laid with 7 little plates and 7 little loaves and 7 little glasses and 7 little knives and forks, and by the wall stood 7 little beds. As she was very hungry, Snowdrop picked up a small piece of each loaf and drank a sip from each of the glasses. After that she thought she would lie down and rest, so she tried all the little beds, but one was too long and the other too short, until, well, at last the 7th suited her, and there she laid down and went to sleep. By and by in came the masters of the cottage, 7 little dwarfs, who lived among the mountains, and dug and searched for gold. They lit up their 7 lamps and saw at once that something was not right. The first said, "Who's been sitting upon my stool?" And the second, "Who's been eating off from my plate?" The third, "Who's been picking at my bread?" Fourth, "Who's been meddling with my spoon?" And the fifth, "Who's been handling my fork?" And "Who's been cutting with my knife?" And "Who's been drinking from my cup?" And the first looked round and said, "And who's been lying on my bed?" And the rest came running up to him, and everybody cried out that someone has been upon their bed too, until the 7th saw Snowdrop and whispered to the others to come and see her. They brought their lamps to look at her and gasped in astonishment and said, "Goodness gracious, what a lovely girl she is." And they took care not to wake her, and the 7th dwarf slept an hour with each of the other dwarves in turn until the night was gone. In the morning, Snowdrop told them all her story. Feeling sorry for her, the dwarves said that if she kept everything tidy, she could stay in the cottage with them, and they would take good care of her. And then they set out for work, seeking gold and silver in the mountains, leaving Snowdrop at home. And as they left, they warned her, saying, "The queen will soon find out where you are. So be very careful and make sure not to let anyone inside." Meanwhile, now that she thought Snowdrop was dead, the queen believed that she must once again be the most beautiful woman in all of the land. So she went to her magic mirror and gazed upon herself and said, "Tell me, mirror, tell me true, of all the ladies in the land, who is the fairest? Tell me, who?" The mirror answered to her, "Thou, queen, art the fairest in all this land, but over the hills in the greenwood shade there lie with 7 dwarves in the home they've made. There Snowdrop is hiding her head, and she is far lovelier, O queen, than thee." And the queen was very much alarmed, because she knew that the mirror always spoke the truth. She was sure that the servant had betrayed her, and she could not bear to think that anyone lived who was more beautiful than herself. So she dressed up as an old woman and went her way over the hills to the dwarf's cottage. She knocked on the door and cried, "Fine things to sell?" Snowdrop looked out the window and said, good day, lady. What have you got to sell?" "Oh, I've got good things, fine things," says the old woman. "Ribbons of all colours." "Oh, I'll let the old lady in. She seemed very good sort of a person," thought Snowdrop, as she ran down and unbolted the door. "Oh, bless me," said the old woman, "how badly your dress is laced. Let me lace it up with these nice new ribbons for you." Snowdrop did not suspect anything at all, so she stood before the old woman. But she set to work so quickly and pulled the ribbons so tight that Snowdrop's breath was stopped. She fell down as if she were dead. "And there's the end to all of your beauty, ha 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 ha," said the spiteful queen. In the evening the 7 dwarfs came home, and I need not say how upset they were to see Snowdrop lying upon the ground as if she were dead. However, they lifted her up, and they found out that the matter was, and they cut the ribbons. In a little bit of time, Snowdrop began to breathe, and soon life came to her again. They said, "That old woman was the queen herself. You gotta be careful next time, and let nobody in while we're away. We warned you before." But then the queen got home. She went straight to her mirror and spoke to it as before, but to her surprise it said this, "Thou, queen, art the fairest in all this land, but over the hills in the greenwood shade, where the 7 dwarves their home have made, there Snowdrop is hiding her head. She is far lovelier far, O queen, than thee." And the blood ran cold in the heart with spite and malice to see that Snowdrop still lived. She dressed herself up in a different disguise and took with her a poisoned comb. Ooh, poisoned comb. As she reached the dwarf's cottage, she knocked at the door and cried, "Fine things to sell?" And Snowdrop said, "I dare not let anyone in." "Oh, but look at my beautiful comb," says the queen. And she held out the poisoned one. It looked so pretty that Snowdrop took it and put it in her hair to try it. But the moment it touched her head, the poison was so powerful that she fell down in a faint. "And there you may lie," said the queen. "Ha, ha, ha, ha." And then she went on her way. By good luck, the dwarves came home early that evening. As soon as they saw Snowdrop lying on the ground, they realized what had happened and found the poisoned comb. When they took the comb from her hair, she awoke again. And once more they warned her, "Snowdrop, stop opening the door to anybody." Meanwhile, the queen ran home, and when the mirror gave her exactly the same answer as before, she shook with rage. "Ah!" she said, "Snowdrop shall die if it costs me my life." So she went into her secret room and prepared a poisoned apple. The outside looked very rosy and tempting, but whoever tasted it was sure to die. and she dressed herself up as a peasant's wife and traveled over the hills to the dwarf's cottage and knocked at the door. But Snowdrop put her head out the window and said, "Oh, I dare not let anyone in, for the dwarves had told me not to." "Oh, do as you please," says the old woman, "but at least take this pretty apple I'll give to you." "No," says Snowdrop, "I dare not take it." "Oh, you silly girl," answered the old woman, "what are you afraid of? Do you think it's poisoned? Come on, you eat one part and I'll eat the other." Now the apple was cleverly made so that one side was good while the other side was poisoned. Snowdrop was very tempted to taste the apple, but it looked really rosy. When she saw the old woman eat it, she could hardly wait. But she had barely taken a bite, and she fell upon the ground dead. "This time nothing will save you," says the queen, and she went home to her glass, and at last it said, "Thou, queen, art the fairest of all the fair." And her wicked heart was glad and happy as such a heart could be. When evening fell and the dwarves came home, they found Snowdrop lying on the ground, and no breath came from her lips, and they lifted her up and combed her hair and washed her face with water. But all of it was in vain, for she seemed truly dead this time. So they laid her down upon the bed, and all 7 watched her and wept for 3 whole days. And then they thought they should bury her. But her cheeks were still rosy, and her face looked just as it did when she was alive. So they said, "We'll never bury her in the cold ground." So instead they made a glass coffin, so that they could still look upon her. And they wrote a name upon it in gold letters, and that she was the king's daughter, and the coffin was placed upon the hill, and one of the dwarves always sat by it and watched. The birds of the air came around too to mourn for Snowdrop. First an owl, and then a raven, and then a dove. And then Snowdrop lay for a long, long time, and still only looked as if she were sleeping. Yeah. Even now she was white as snow, and red as blood, and black as ebony, until one day a prince came upon her, and he saw Snowdrop, and read the golden letters, and called at the cottage. The prince offered the dwarves money and begged them to let him take Snowdrop away, but they said, "We will not part with her for all the gold in the world." At last, however, they had pity on him and gave him the coffin, but the moment he lifted it up to carry it home, the piece of the apple fell from between her lips, and Snowdrop woke up and said, "Where am I?" And the prince said, "You are quite safe with me." And he told her what had happened, and said, "I love you more than anything in the whole world. Come with me to my father's palace, and be my wife." And Snowdrop said, "Yes, yes," and went home with the prince. And Snowdrop's old enemy, the queen, was invited to their wedding feast. And as she was dressing herself in rich clothing, she looked into the magic mirror and said, "Tell me, mirror, tell me true, of ladies in the land, who is the fairest? Tell me who." And the mirror said, "Thou, lady, art the loveliest here, but lovelier far is the new-made queen." Ooh. When she heard this, she was full of rage. Her envy and curiosity were great, so she could not help setting out to see the bride. When she got there and saw that it was none other than Snowdrop, alive and well, she choked with rage. She did. She was so mad that she choked. And she fell down and died. Blah. As for Snowdrop and the prince, they lived happily ever after and ruled happily over that land for many, many, many years. And sometimes they went up to the mountains and paid a visit to the little dwarves who had been so kind to Snowdrop in their time of need. And they give them presents and cabbages and carrots and apples and watermelons and snowballs
and cookies
and pies and ice cream. Ice cream. And that's the end.
Popsicles.
Popsicles.